This industry has many mysteries, but maybe one of the largest is just how they fumbled John Halo for about 15 years. Today's story is kind of touching on that, but it is altogether more serious, because in October, art director Glenn Israel announced that after 17 years, he would be, quote, no longer contributing to the Halo universe. And it's quite rough. He warned other devs about the risks of being taken advantage of by the industry, and he said he would share this particular story in its entirety when it is absolutely safe to do so next year. Today's update is that it's now next year, and he shared his story. He clearly feels secure enough that he can, and he has damning claims of numerous unethical and/or unlawful practices committed by senior Halo Studios representatives. That's a quote, and it is across 2 posts. Now that framing is important because it's a way of protecting himself from a company that he believes is actually out to get him. Our art director is making these claims under a specific Washington state law. It is the Revised Code of Washington, Title 49, Chapter 44, Section 211. Thrilling. It was passed in 2022. And what it does is it prevents a company from asking or enforcing a non-disclosure agreement if the former employee breaching the NDA is discussing activities they can, quote, reasonably believe are illegal or against a mandate of public policy. And that is absolutely huge. It means he can make these claims, and whatever NDA was required around the time of his departure, well, because of that law, basically, it can't be enforced in order to stop him. Now, if he's simply using this as a shield to make libelous allegations, then there would be other legal levers to pull, of course. But Microsoft's response to the situation does suggest that they're not yet taking that approach. Here's what a spokesperson told Windows Central. Out of respect, we don't publicly discuss individual employee issues, but we do take all claims seriously for both current and former employees. So with that said, let's go and take these claims just as seriously as Microsoft says they're going to. I'll be real, if you don't want to code or you don't like games, skip this. But if you're still here, then that's good, because it means today's sponsor, Boot.dev, was built specifically for how us gamers actually learn, and that's actually more relevant than ever. Now, Boot teaches back-end development. That's the kind of thing that lands you 100k plus jobs, and they do it through a proper 12-month program structured like an RPG. Leaderboards, achievements, a Discord that actually helps. Over 750,000 students who have completed 33.7 million lessons, which is wild. And that's covering tech like Python, TypeScript, and Go, all from the fundamentals up. There's projects, there's modules, and the likes of actually using Git properly. It is fantastic. Now, my perspective in this is I did a BEng computer science, focused more on C++ and C#, kind of game engine-y stuff. Completely different world to web dev, which is why I also need Boot. And their teaching approach, I can say, is incalculably better than the way it was done at university. And here's the thing. The AI tools are everywhere now, your cursors, your Claude codes, but they're only as good as the person who's using them. Boot teaches you the fundamentals that separate serious engineers from vibe coders who just ship security nightmares. Really, they do. And their new training grounds feature even generates personalized problems based on what has challenged you when you've been using Boot, all with spaced repetition baked in. It's seriously gigabrain, and you can get 25% off your first purchase at boot.dev/Bellular News. You'll save the most using the annual sub, and of course, if you're not happy, they'll refund you on the spot. There's a loose timeline of events that Israel claims happened between January 2024 and October 2025, which is when he left. And they detail malpractice from Halo Studios leadership, but also from Microsoft's various HR teams whenever he tried to highlight the problems. Between January 24 and June 25, Israel claims he saw leadership commit acts including, but not limited to, blacklisting, fraud, rampant favoritism/cronyism, manifesting as hiring, and career growth interference, as well as multiple harassment campaigns designed to provoke the constructive discharge of, quote, unwanted employees who otherwise were in good standing. So that's not looking too cheery. And from the side of Halo Studios, this was then followed by, quote, a 4-day-long act of harassment that was designed to give them leave to manufacture cause to fire him in July 2025. In August, he frames the catastrophic mismanagement of Halo campaign evolved as meaning that leadership could temporarily reassign the art team from his presumably still unannounced project, and falsely characterize his role as redundant. And Israel believes this is retaliation for his complaints to Microsoft HR. Now, to elaborate on this, speaking to game developer, he has since confirmed that he left in October because of this move from them and the failure of the investigation into it. Now, in June 2025, after he had filed reports, a senior global employee relations representative threatened retaliation on first contact and promised to quash any further investigation. It's obviously rough, and by July, the same individual is accused of falsely closing further reports. Now, in September, it allegedly got escalated to a director who was investigating the August events, but Israel frames them as being unwilling to consider anything prior. So from his perspective, there was no actual investigation, and the witnesses he provided weren't spoken to. And then finally, one of the explicit breaches of law that he cites is this: that Microsoft contravened a Washington state law requiring them to give Israel access to his personnel file for him to review. And on top of all of that, he's got some broader suspicions as well, and that's that Microsoft uses layoffs as an excuse to just get rid of people who had made legitimate complaints, and that the Microsoft HR structure is designed to be, quote, deliberately compartmentalized to obfuscate responsibility and create plausible deniability. Yes, this all does sound like an intelligence operation, and I guess that's how HR operates in many big companies. But what's perhaps telling is that former and current employees, as well as contractors, have actually chimed in support of Israel, which suggests that all of this sounds rather familiar to them. And that's hardly surprising, because 343 Industries has been accused of being a complete mess for years. Let's take a look at that mess. So back in 2019, Halo Infinite's leadership was reorganized. That was a year before the game was revealed in 2020. Obviously, the reveal was a shit show, and it shouldn't have been a surprise that it wasn't really going to be ready for launch. Obviously, a delay followed, along with the return of Halo veterans to the dev teams. But here's the thing, apparently stuff did not improve after that. And by 2023, as PC Gamer framed it at the time, almost the entire company's leadership team had been rotated out. That means franchise director, creative director, studio head, and multiple leads within Halo Infinite. Just all of them yoked in some way. Now, insiders speaking to Halo content creators like Rebs Gaming blamed that era's leadership for many of Infinite's failings. That's things like cut content, lack of support, lack of collaboration, all the stuff that went into that game sadly being a disappointment. And to compound on things being shit, layoffs at 343 in 2023 presumably didn't help matters, especially since so many longtime staff were already gone and ended up leaving as a part of those layoffs. All of that was at least partially down to a culture of outsourcing that was deeply affected by Microsoft's policies. And this has been reported all over the place for years. Basically, an 18-month on, 6-month off demand for contractors that was allegedly used to contract experienced devs without having to pay for full-time employees. Now, at the time, former senior staff were quite quick to blame incompetent leadership up top during Halo Infinite development for the state of things. Perhaps because of that, things were meant to change in 2024. Time to rebrand things away from 343 and to Halo Studios. But not only that, they would switch from the Slipspace engine to the Unreal engine, which would presumably make working with outsourcing teams easier, and we even got the promise of multiple games being in development. But within a year, things had not improved. Israel's claims are right in the middle of this, but the layoffs as a part of the wider Microsoft shift do actually reveal even more chaos. And that's because sources inside the studio speaking to Engadget painted a dire picture. Here's a quote: "I don't think anyone is really happy about the quality of the product right now," they said. "There's been a lot of tension and pep talks trying to rally folks to ship." Not really a great quote, and this would be right around the time when Israel claims his team was reassigned to Halo Campaign Evolved, presumably to get that ready for its October reveal. Especially because, as of November, Halo Infinite had actually ended active development, which does actually mean that the game's promised 10-year plan only lasted around 4 years. But that's okay, because now there's a new plan, with of course speculation that Halo Campaign Evolved will be a stepping stone to a full Unreal Engine-based Halo multiplayer product to replace Infinite. But Campaign Evolved is core to Xbox's plan for the 2026 anniversary celebrations. It's one of the, quote, 4 horsemen of Xbox games releasing this year. Which does mean it's quite a shame that Microsoft don't really seem interested in ensuring that the people that actually make that game are safe to make something great. But you know what? That is nothing new. Let's get into Microsoft's skill as a custodian of video games. Here's an amazing quote. "There was no visible intervention or support from Microsoft," recalled one former developer. "Nothing ever improved from my perspective, things just got worse." Now, that actually wasn't someone talking about Halo, but it is relevant because back in 2022, Kotaku were reporting on structural problems at the State of Decay developer Undead Labs. Now, these were problems from before Microsoft had acquired them in 2018, but, of course, they had not improved under Microsoft. There were allegations of leadership issues, hiring based on nepotism from post-acquisition studio head Philip Holt, a constant stream of discrimination towards women, even from the female head of People and Inclusion. And after many complaints, Microsoft eventually did step in, and some of those individuals left the company. But from the perspective of staff, not much was actually changed. Hence the quote. And I bring that up because it's kind of relevant to how Microsoft runs studios that they either, make, in the case of 343, or acquire. And it feels like an echo of today's allegations. You see, Microsoft's approach has always been hands-off, just let the studio deal with their own shit and, don't really get involved with staff complaints. But the thing is, Halo Studios is not some indie team who were acquired and brought in with an existing history of dysfunction. They were one of Microsoft's flagship teams, made by Microsoft, making one of their flagship franchises, and even that does not seem to have saved them at any point. Perhaps that's why they've changed leadership so often, and it seems obvious the core reason why is that relationship with Microsoft has not led to a more stable environment for developers, certainly if Israel's complaints, and all of the reporting from the last 5 years is true. And that means that the future of Halo, well, maybe will just look like its recent past. So it all begs a question. Whenever 343 rebranded, did it mean anything would actually be new? Well, when the rebrand happened, their studio head told Xbox Wire that it would be a new chapter. Of course, if you really break Halo down, there's been two very distinct chapters. Chapter 1, Bungie. Chapter 2, 343. Here's what matters there. The historic problems of 343 Industries are not what forced Israel from the company. That's the core thing I want people to understand here. It's that the current leadership, after the transition to Halo Studios, that's what he frames as being the problem here. Because underpinning all that is still Microsoft and the structural problems that they have allowed to fester. Now, as of the time of this being recorded, there's no sign that Israel is pursuing legal action over, of course, these activities that would be illegal, if they happened. It's very much a case then of Microsoft and leadership at Halo Studios having their practices just be called out. And be called out by someone whose job title was art director. That is no small title. And to be honest with you, as much as it would mean so much for me to be able to say that I'm glad this stuff has been reported and I think it's going to lead to some real change and that'll be good for Halo, I'd love to say that. I grew up in Halo, but I just don't think that's going to happen. And the simple reason why is structural issues at Microsoft. They've pretty much mishandled games like since the Xbox 360 era. They've been absolutely notorious as an owner of studios. I don't really see that changing. I mean, hey, maybe Asha will form some sort of task force to solve problems like this. I hope she does. And if it works, I'll champion that and cheer her on. But right now, no, I'm not going to trust them. I'm actually going to need playable proof. That's what I would recommend for you as well. But not the only thing I'd recommend. And that's because the Stop Killing Games crew has got a little bit more legit, a bit more serious, a bit larger. Ubisoft is now in court in France. The Stop Killing Games people are involved, and it's all escalating. So if you want to learn about that, check out this video next.